great leadership debate. Are indeed great leaders born, or are they bred? Are they nurtured? You know, for decades, young people were exposed to organized sports, civics classes, fraternal organizations, and that's where they got those leadership skills. They modeled their parents. But more and more, school systems are on a tighter budget and more strict curriculum. So as a result, at least in the Bowling Green and Warren County area, they have partnered with the area business community to implement something called the Leader in Me. We're going to talk more about that and developing young leaders when Kentucky Outlook comes your way. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to Kentucky Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. We're talking about leaders today and making young leaders. Are they born? Are they really? Or are they nurtured? Are they bred? We're going to talk about a unique program, at least in the Bowling Green and Warren County school systems, whereby they've partnered with the area business community to implement something called the Leader in Me. It's based, it was created by the late Stephen Covey using a model based on Covey's successful, maybe you've heard of it, the successful franchise, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, we are delighted to have with us today in the studio the late Stephen Covey's son, Sean Covey, who's continuing the mantle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Barbara. Good to be with you.
In addition, Nick Furman joins us. He is with the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce. And so we'll get into that a little bit. But this franchise, my gosh, successful. Yeah. At least you've sold 4 million copies of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens.
Yes.
And it's been translated into 20 languages. Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Yeah, well, my dad wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People about 25 years ago, and when I read it the first time, I thought it was kind of boring.
You heard it here,
So I rewrote it for kids, you know. So it's the same principles, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, think win-win, just adapted to teenagers, their issues, you know, dating and sports and school and dealing with teachers and everything they have to deal with.
Well, that's a good, and of course you had a great teacher. I suspect having Stephen Covey as your dad might have been a little different than some other dads. Was he the kind of guy that would come in and say, you know, okay, today we're going to, no, not that structured?
No, he's pretty normal. You know, we had problems in our home just like everybody else, and but he was big on principles, you know, and like if you came home from school and said, you know, Dad, my teacher makes me so mad I'm going to flunk school, he'd take you aside and say, you know what, that's kind of victim language, and if you flunk school, it's your fault, son, not his. And so he was always teaching you to take responsibility for your life, but, you know, we had a pretty normal upbringing.
9 children. You're one of 9.
I was one of 9 kids. So I
Beautiful.
had to fight to get any attention.
I hear that. I hear that. Nick Furman, the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce. So let's talk about how this came to be. You know, as we alluded to in the introduction to the show, used to be you'd do organized sports, you'd join the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, and then you'd kind of model your parents' behavior or your caregiver, and that's where you learned your leadership skills. But the business community in these parts thought that this was important enough. Why?
Well, it's critical. Our mission as a Chamber of Commerce is to be the voice and the driving force for business and future employment and job growth in the region. And so to look at the source code, what was coming up into the workforce, the students matriculating into skills and then becoming effective workers, that's what distinguishes a community in economic development. If we want to have more Corvettes, more Covey aluminums, more Bowling Green metal formings, more companies like that growing in our area, we need to have the ability to provide them the best high-performing workers. And this is a program that will change the game for our economy because it's changing the character of students in our schools.
So, I mean, that having been said, okay, makes sense, right? We'll get in there early. We're talking kindergarten through 6th grade, and we'll teach them these skills and see where they go with them. So, you just said what you said. Yeah, makes sense. Now, how do you go about actually taking an entire city and county school system and implementing this program into it?
Well, the third person who's here would really be two people: the superintendents
Who couldn't make
of
it.
Warren, of Warren County Schools and Bowling Green City Schools, because that partnership is a three-way deal. We have partnered with the Covey organization to bring this into the school system. The school system wants it and has embraced the 7 habits and embraced the whole leader in me concept. So we have push and pull, we have synergy, we have a lot of synergy, that if it wasn't all 3 parties working together, we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't be here to this place. Now, while we're talking about the 7 habits, as you mentioned, your father, Stephen Covey, the late Stephen Covey, came up with 25 years ago, and highly successful, the 7 habits of highly effective people.
Sure.
You took that and you said, you know what? This could be applied to younger people, right? Let's take those 7 habits and let's train those kids. But we decided that we would go into one of the area schools and see just how far they've taken this 7 habits. We'd like for you right now to meet Selena and Elijah and learn about the 7 habits. Take a look.
Habit number 1, be proactive. Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit number 3, put first things first. Habit number 4, think when win. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Habit number 6, synergize, and habit number 7, sharpen the saw.
Well, each habit is almost like an ingredient you put in, and unlike in a meal, you're trying to make sure that it's all balanced, so you have enough grains and all that, and you want to do the same with habits. Make sure you're proactive, begin with the end in mind, and you sharpen the saw, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and the other habits.
5th grader Elijah Buell and Selena Heldick. And the cute thing is Elijah decided that he's going to be a chef one day when he grows up. So you see the way he used that little recipe anecdote? I like that a lot. To talk about the 7 habits. Okay, these 7 habits, we come in, you know, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, think win-win. I think all of you who are watching this program could probably get something from this. Sharpen the saw, synergize. Those are all important elements, and you're saying these are the keys to good leaders.
Yeah, well, the 7 habits is a framework. It's a language. You know, it teaches principles like accountability, responsibility, vision, how to work well with other people, how to resolve conflicts. You know, and we find that little kids, even kindergartners, can learn the language and can practice these. You know, and so a kid goes to school and they learn how to read and write and how to do their math, and they also learn these foundational skills, how to listen effectively to other people, how to sharpen their saw, which is the 7th habit, you know, which is all about keeping balanced, you know, mind, heart, body, and spirit. They learn how to be proactive and not be victims, how to set and achieve goals. You know, so the leader in me is, it teaches the language of the 7 habits, and then it gives kids the opportunity to be leaders in whatever they're good at. So it's all about finding out what children excel in and offering them a way to express it inside of the school.
Now, as we mentioned, unfortunately, we weren't able to have the superintendents join us as we're taping the show today, but the business community absolutely got behind this. It's not without a cost, right?
Oh, no.
Right.
It does take money to provide for the training. One of the things that's happening today that's brought Sean here is the Leader in Me Symposium, which is 800 and some educators from 14 states, 4 countries are represented, came to Bowling Green today to learn and to participate in this symposium. So there's a lot of training for teachers and administrators in the school system, and that costs money. It takes them out of the school for the time that they're going to get the training. There's certifications, and there's accountability all the way throughout the process. And so the cost, we're investing $1.6 million that we're raising from the business community, and we've reached the $1 million mark just about today.
Well, congratulations on that. But I know a lot of viewers out there are watching, they're going, okay, they're spending $1.6 million on this program. Why aren't they spending it? Of course, everyone's got their special something. Why aren't they? So have you had to deal with that from the community as well?
I think a little bit, but once people see the change in the schools that's occurring right now in both school systems, Warren County and Bowling Green, they don't ask those questions anymore. We're not taking money away from the sports teams or from other extracurricular activities, the leader in me is an enhancement. It generates excitement in all the things the school does and all the extracurriculars. And the teachers themselves have repainted the classrooms in the 7 Habits patina and 7 Habits themes on their own nickel. So they're using their own money to make the 7 Habits personal in their classrooms.
Well, in their classrooms, but also, what about curriculum? And so this is more of an enhancement. It's not taking the place of some other subject. It's more, they're incorporating it into what they're doing.
I'm not the expert here, but Sean is. But it is integrated into everything, and that's what's special about it. It is not an add-on fad for the teacher, separate from the mission. It's integrated into the entire school mission, day by day, class by class, hour by hour.
So the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce, you know, is helping to raise this $1.6 million to pay for this program to enhance the city and county schools, and you feel like it's a good investment.
It's a strategic investment. I don't think there's a better investment. I think the confidence that the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce board had going into this was mostly derived from the fact that they had just finished a building campaign, built the Chamber of Commerce headquarters down on 7th and College Avenue, a beautiful facility. This is building character. So they thought, well, we'll do a capital campaign just like we did to build our building, but now we're going to build character in our schools.
And build a foundation.
It is a foundation.
For future workers. We're going to take a short break here on Kentucky Outlook, and when we come back, we're going to pick Sean Covey's brain. So stay with us. We'll be back with the 7 Habits right after this. Kentucky Outlook continues. I'm Barbara Dee. We are joined by Sean Covey, who is an author, a publisher, a motivational speaker, and we'd probably spend the rest of our time if we went through all his credentials. He is the son of the late Stephen Covey, and you may be familiar with Covey Publishing and the 7 Habits. Now, your father authored the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People about 25 years ago, extremely famous in many countries, many different languages. And so here you are, you're one of 9 children growing up with that dad, you know. But as you alluded to in the earlier segment, it wasn't as if he came home every day with a rundown of, you know, this is what we're going to do. Instead, he integrated it into your life.
Right.
Which is, I think, a much more effective way to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he taught us that, you know, he was always teaching. He was a professor. So he was always teaching, but he always he taught by example more than anything else, you know. So the 7 Habits was his life's work, and we saw these. As kids, we saw these develop over time. Yeah, at one point they were 12, and then it was 5, and then eventually settled in at 7 from all of his study. But you know, his big idea was we need to return to character. The 7 Habits came about by a 200-year study he did of American literature. And he found the first 100 years was focused on character traits, such as hard work and service and the law of the harvest. And the second 100 years was it became more focused on personality and image and skills. And so the 7 Habits was written to kind of help us return to the character ethic, you know, responsibility and hard work and service and those types of principles. And so he was, you know, he passed away this past year, but he was as good in private or even better than he was in public. So he was a good dad. I was lucky to have a good father.
Absolutely. And, you know, I want to talk so much more about that because we hear often that, you know, we're on the downslide as a civilization, that we've lost those basic skills, the basic ability just to be human, to be kind to others. And so the 7 Habits, as you say, after your father did this study of 200 years. But before we get into that, let's take one more look at Selena Heldick, a 5th grade student from Natcher Elementary, who shares with us the Covey's 7 Habits. Take a look.
Proactive. Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit number 3, put first things first. Habit number 4, think when win. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Habit number 6, synergize. And habit number 7, sharpen the saw.
And so there you have it, Selena Heldick, a 5th grade student, Natcher Elementary, The 7 Habits. And what this is all about is the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce is in the process of raising $1.6 million to help fund this program. It's called The Leader in Me. And what they're doing is they're giving it almost as a gift to the city and county school systems who have agreed to integrate it into their school systems to help develop future leaders, kindergarten through 6th graders. And so you saw a 5th grader there who's quite impressive. Sean Covey, whose father, Stephen Covey, authored The Leader in Me and who is continuing with that philosophy with the mantle, is joining us. You're in town because there is a huge gathering as we coming this day.
Yeah.
And you're bringing in people from all over the country, from other countries, who are sharing information about implementation of the Leader in Me program. So this is a beautiful opportunity to learn about being a leader.
Yeah, so what this is a big gathering of all the schools in the area, as well as outside the area, that are doing the Leader in Me. And they come together to learn from each other. We'll do school visits today. They'll go in and we'll talk about, how do you teach kids leadership? And by leadership, we don't mean the next CEO or the 3%. We're talking about everyone being a leader, leading your own life, being a leader among your friends at home, and so forth. But we'll go and visit these schools that are doing it, and we'll go into classrooms, 800 people going into classrooms one by one and watching what they're doing, how they learn the 7 habits, how they learn how to set and achieve goals, and see how it changes the culture of the school. Because the Leader in Me, it's not a curriculum, it's not character education. We look at it as an operating system. And so everything else you're trying to do in the school will be turbocharged by this. And it's as much about the teachers as it is the students. So it starts with the teachers and helps them get on the same page, get a common mission and vision for the school. Then it goes to the students, and then it brings in the parents. And so you get this great community effect.
So if you're watching this program and you're affiliated with someone, a student or a loved one, a grandchild, whatever it is that's in the Bowling Green City or the Warren County school systems, they are, as we speak, actively involved in integrating this Leader in Me program in the schools. And so a visit to one of these schools in the area, and you'd be amazed at what you see, the 7 habits. So let's break those down.
Yeah.
Selena Heldick shared those with us. Be proactive. We talk about leadership, and you say it's not the future CEOs, it's just everybody sort of taking responsibility for their own lives.
Yeah.
I would ask you, if you had to define, and we talk about leaders in the 21st century, what makes a good leader?
Well, I mean, there's probably 100 definitions of leadership, right? And you're in front with a flag or behind with a whip or whatever. I remember asking my dad one time, if you had to give a definition of leadership, what would it be? And I thought it was profound. He said, leadership is communicating to another person their worth and potential so clearly that they see it in themselves. So leadership is about helping another person see how good they are. So that's the foundation of this. Leader in Me it's really about affirming the child and saying, you've got great talent and skill. There's great things you can do. And it might not be in math or English. It might be in public speaking, or it might be in making friends. There's so many ways kids can show their talents.
Now, if you're familiar with Psychology 101, when you learn about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right at the top is self-actualization, which speaks to one's self-esteem. Which is what this is talking about, getting right in there and telling you, yeah, you're worth it, you're good, which totally contrasts some philosophies, the tough love philosophy, the negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that?
Well, I believe this is a philosophy that, instead of the distribution curve of putting children, that's the common paradigm, is some children are smart, some children are less smart. Right? And you're in the 56th percentile on this test and so forth. We got to throw that away because kids are gifted in so many different ways. And as parents, we see this. Some of your kids are naturally academic and some aren't. But kids have this spectrum of intelligence. And so this starts with the belief that every child has got these great gifts. And then it gives you a mindset, you've got gifts, but then it gives you a tool set. The 7 habits becomes a tool set. Begin with the end in mind. Every situation I look at, I've got to say, what's my end in mind with this relationship, with this project, with my life, with my schooling? sharpening the saw. You know, how do I stay balanced, and how do I keep myself refreshed and current?
And that's
sharp.
a huge one, especially in this time.
Yeah.
We're going to take another short break here on Kentucky Outlook, and when we come back, we'll talk more with Sean Covey. Don't go away. Welcome back to Kentucky Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb, and we're joined today by Sean Covey, who's an author, a publisher, and the son of the late Stephen Covey, who 25 years ago wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It just made a huge impact on the world and continues to do so all these decades later. You've picked up the mantle, and now you've written several books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And someone out there watching might think, well, he's just running on his dad's coattails. You probably had to deal with that all your life, right?
Yeah, sure.
But you say to that,
Well, I feel like this is a mission, you know, that my dad was all about teaching the world principles, you know, principle-centered leadership, that if you want to succeed in life, if you follow certain principles, you will, whether as a person, a team, or an organization. And so the company I belong to, Franklin Covey, we're all about doing the same thing. So we feel like this mission towards spreading principles around the world is just starting. And my dad always wanted to leave a legacy, and to do that, he felt like he needed to build an organization that could carry on his work after he passed, which is what we're trying to do.
and the Leader in Me program, which is in the Bowling Green City and the Warren County schools, you know, we talked about some of those 7 habits. Is that to say that we have lost these skills? You know, we talk about being proactive, being responsible for yourselves, starting with the end in mind, kind of setting goals. You know, where do we want to get to? Has some of that been lost?
I think so, don't you? I mean, if you look around.
But why?
Well, I think it's so many things. I think it's the breakdown of the family in many ways. I think the school system is becoming by necessity a safety net for the breakdown of the family in a lot of ways. I think there's so much media, so much, there's a lot of good stuff, but there's a lot of negative stuff there. So it's a different day. It's a different time. It's more challenging for sure. And so, the workforce has changed too. The skill set required today by graduates is so different. You've got to be collaborative. You've got to have teamwork. You've got to be adaptable. And when I interview people for jobs, the first question I ask is, are you a good team player? You know, not what your GPA was. And so the times have changed. There's more challenge because of the family situation. Mm-hmm. And there's this new industrial age that has passed onto the knowledge worker age, the information age. Mm-hmm. The skill set required today is so different. Kids have got to learn core academics, and they have to learn 21st century skills.
The skill set very different, and yet, getting back to your late father, Stephen Covey, the bottom line is you have these fundamentals, you have this foundation on which you build that human being, and those haven't changed.
Yeah, they haven't changed. It's still inside out. The way you change is if you've got problems in your public life with a spouse, with colleagues, teammates, whatever, the issue is you. You got to go back to yourself and change from the inside out, not outside in, which is the government's approach to changing people, right, is legislation. That can help, but inside out means if I've got a problem with my wife and how we're getting along, it's probably something with me, and I've got to go back to myself. I've got to be proactive. I've got to think about what the end in mind here is. I've got to think win-win. And the same thing in schools. The students will change when the staff changes first. And so if you're a principal or a teacher in a school and you think that the key to the outcome of the kids is teaching them more, it's not. It's you changing, the school getting on the same page, coming together, forming a culture that kids want to be part of, and then just watch the magic that can happen with the kids.
And then just let it go. The Leader in Me is taking place right now in the Bowling Green City and the Warren County schools. The Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce is in the process of raising $1.6 million to help pay for the program, to integrate it into the schools. It's not affecting any school budgets or anything like that. But my big question is, how do you measure? How are there any, because you know, people like to see numbers and they like to see results. You can walk into a school and get a sense of it, But what are some firm ways that you can measure that the leader in me is
well,
making
we
a
look at four
difference?
things. Academic achievement. When the culture improves and the kids want to be there, academics will improve. Lower discipline problems. You'll see the drop immediately with these Leader in Me schools because they're getting along better. Parent engagement will increase, and teacher engagement will increase. So teachers will want to be there. So those are four measurable outcomes you can look at every time. And we are seeing remarkable results with this Leader in Me program across the country with those four measures. The intangibles are the student self-confidence. And you can feel that, and you can see that when you go into a school and you see these people on camera. We just got interviewed.
Well, they're fifth graders.
They're fifth graders.
And the one young lady spoke at a chamber function where there were 600 people stood up on that stage and never flinched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just the few. This is something for everyone. And
So you don't think necessarily that leaders are born, you think they can be nurtured?
absolutely. I think leadership is a choice, not a position, not a title. It's a choice, and you can choose to lead your own life. All you have to do is start following correct principles. You've got to start learning to make commitments and keep them. You've got to start learning to think about win-win, which is I want to succeed and I want you to succeed. You know,
Team.
team, and then not being a victim, being proactive. I'm in charge of my life. If I'm unhappy, it's me. If I'm happy, it's me. I can take control.
Accept responsibility. We're just about out of time, Sean Covey. The 7 habits: be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put things first, think win-win. What's your favorite?
Probably the one that's the most difficult most difficult for me to live, which is habit 5. It's called seek first to understand, then to be understood. You listen before you talk. And it's how to listen to another person with the real intent. I want to understand where you're coming from. Not to reply, not to rebuttal, not to judge, but just to understand. And that the key to communication is really understanding another person. We're taught how to speak, how to write, how to think. We're not taught how to listen, which is the most important communication skill of all. So I think a lot of problems will be solved if we could work on that one.
And listen like a child.
Yes.
And listen like a child. His name is Sean Covey. He's an author, publisher, motivational speaker, and he's in town as part of the Leader in Me program, part of the Bowling Green City and the Warren County Schools, the son of the late author Stephen Covey. And that's going to wrap it up for our Kentucky Outlook, but we leave you with 5th grader Elijah Buell with some words on those 7 habits to effective teens. Take a look.
Each habit is almost like an ingredient you put in, and in a meal, you're trying to make sure that it's all balanced, so you have enough grains and all that, and you want to do the same with habits. Make sure you're proactive, begin with the end in mind, and you sharpen the saw, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and the other habit.